Mr. Bigger.
All right, sister, that's quite enough. I'll handle this. I don't suppose you regard me as a mere chit of a girl, Mr. Bigger?
Well, you said it.
Very well, then. It wasn't so bad, was it?
Pat, to me, had so much talent it was oozing out.
All the girls will have to share. Oh, not you, of course, matron. You'll be in room 19.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Sober.
Not at all. I'm sure no one will disturb you.
Her career was greatly helped as regards regularity of employment by her weight, because there she was, a great big roly-poly, and roly-polies are funny. It didn't allow people to see her, the employers, the movers and shakers of show business, or entertainment or drama, to perceive her as anything but that fat lady.
For that night in the hostel, you showed me your true feelings. Now I beg you, let me show you mine.
But I don't want to see yours.
Don't fight it.
Oh, help!
She was a sexy girl. She had a very pretty face. And a very sexy girl, oh yes, flashing eyes.
I got rhythm.
Hattie Jacques, one of Britain's best-loved comedy actresses, died 20 years ago. Famous for her roles in the Carry On films and the popular sitcom Sykes, her career in show business spanned over 35 years.
She had a wicked, a puckish sense of humour.
If she started to laugh, oh, it was terrible. It really was. It was painful because you couldn't stop and she couldn't stop.
When she was feeling a bit miserable after the show, whatever it was, she said, "Go on, Clive, do good looking." And I used to have to go. And that made her howl with laughter. I don't know why. Go on, Clive, do good looking.
From the beginning of her career until her death, Hattie lived in Eardley Crescent, Earl's Court, London.
The house was the sort of place, and I've always been very good at making my own homes, and I love my lairs. But Hattie's house was the sort of place you wanted to move in. You just felt that you could be so comfortable there. It was cosy, it was tasteful, there was an abundance.
The day I was introduced to her, she was standing in front of the cooker, which was very sort of characteristic, in a long evening dress, this at like 9 o'clock in the morning. A very rather tatty evening dress, which she wore as a house coat. I mean, it had sort of one or two tears in it and was slightly stained, and it had a little train on it.
She was a great gravy maker, I remember. I mean, I've never been able to make gravy in my life. She had this enormous tin into which she'd baked something or other, and then there'd be the wooden spoon, and she'd be stirring it around and putting in the pepper, cigarette in her mouth. Ash is very good in gravy. It gives it sort of frisson.
I remember being woken up at 3 or 4 in the morning by this racket next door, because the living room was next to our bedroom. And I went in there, and there's Spike Milligan and Peter Sellers and Michael Bentin, I think, and all jamming, all playing music at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Hattie started her career in music hall at the Players Theatre in London's West End. They called her the Queen of the Players.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, that Queen of the Players Theatre, your own Hattie Jacques.
Come on, everybody, sing! Don't be a song, do you play? It's all over, ladies, it can't be any other way. Oh, got the band with the old baggy. I will try with the old dog.
And it was magic. It was... I was intoxicated by the way she was doing it, because everybody was singing old vaudeville songs. At the end of it, because she was a big lady then, but moved beautifully. And at the end of it, and she leapt into the air and landed in the splits.
And afterwards, when we finished the show, there was no way out a stage door or anything. You'd have to come down the side of the stage, down the steps, through the audience. And they used to wait for her, and a cheer would go up when she walked through.
Her big break came with the hit radio comedy It's That Man Again.
she loved it. I mean, it was her first experience of being a star. Really, I mean, she became well known overnight.
But don't disturb the jelly in the basin.
Well, but won't you taste of soap?
Oh, yes, but it's scented soap.
Oh, I see.
I had some this morning.
Did you enjoy it?
Not very much, but I'm all right now.
You would just call her voluptuous because everything was in proportion, And very attractive. I mean, some men are very attracted by large ladies. And John certainly was.
You and you alone.
In 1947, Hattie met actor John Le Mesurier. Within 2 years, they were married.
My theory is that Hat fell in love with John Le Mesurier because John Le Mesurier and Robin, her brother, were very alike. I mean, they were vague like you cannot believe, and they were both very keen on jazz, and they used to go to little cellars they liked in Soho. Poor old Hat was having a dinner party, and John would turn up 2 days later, and she'd say, "Where have you been?" And he said, oh, darling, I'm so sorry, I've been very good jazz. And she said, "But it's 2 days later." Time goes so quickly when you can't see daylight.
There was great harmony there, always. And that suited her, you see. The hurly-burly of show business life, to come home to that sort of calmness must have been lovely.
Then in 1958 came the first of the Carry On films.
Not today. You're all right.
Hattie was to feature in 14 of the 31 that were made.
Feel a definite thump. Regularly. A boom, 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 boom. That's it.
Yes. Strong, that's your heart beating, normally.
She was the strong-willed, stern medical officer with a heart of gold who then takes Kenneth Connor, the weakling, under her wing and turns him into a man of steel. And she played that beautifully and with great reality. The scene we had no reality to it. It was a joke about throwing her weight about, which was clearly an early attempt to take advantage of her physique. And the scene was dropped. I was very glad it was. I never much liked jokes about Hattie being overweight, because that wasn't the point. With Hattie, she was much more than that. I mean, she became later a target for those jokes in the Carry-Ons because the writer, Talbot Rothwell, was a joke writer. I preferred her role, for example, as Eric Sykes' sister, where her size was never referred to.
What's the matter?
They're engaged.
The Sykes series began in 1960 and ran for 19 years.
Did you give us a brr, 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 brr.
That was, oil.
Well, that's not an engaged sound. An engaged sound is sort of but it's not an oil.
It was an oil. It wasn't a I would have known.
Because you need to get
Yes.
Hattie was now working with the top names in show business.
Do a lot of reading, don't you? You'll hurt your eyes, you will.
I'll hurt yours in a minute.
Oh, blimey! How far round does it go?
The speed of Hattie's success isn't surprising to me because it was so hard to find women at that time, particularly in radio, and later, almost immediately in TV, who could do what Hattie could do. You had a very limited pool that you could draw on. You had Patricia Hayes, Miriam Carlin, June Whitfield. I've nearly finished the list. So when Hattie was obviously a good comedian, a good comedy actress, everyone wanted to employ her, so she became famous very quickly.
Sir Bernard, you can't be suggesting...
Why not? You know there's a mutual attraction between us. You must have felt it, working together all these years, side by side, brushing against each other.
Oh, so you felt it too, that exciting tingling.
I've only got to think of you, and I have a tingle.
Oh, how wonderful, but I never thought that you wanted me to.
Desperately.
Oh.
I'll tell you something about Hattie. She was such a giggler. And when she giggled, well, when she tried to suppress a laugh, It was so infectious. You could see it in some of the programmes. One was when we had Peter Sellers in. Hattie and I were sitting in a settee, facing that, and we're saying, life is so boring. Nothing ever happens in this place. But what happened is that we'd never seen Peter made up. We'd done the last run-through in our ordinary clothes. But when he came in, he'd let out some of his teeth. And he got this, like, hedgehog haircut, which is like a brush.
Don't you know who I am?
No, I don't.
Sorry, give me a minute. I just bit her hearing off.
My feeling about the character that she had playing Eric Sykes' sister was that she invested it with all her own personal charm, that there really was no meat and potatoes on the plate to begin with as a role. She had not got much of a character. She was there as a cipher, really, or as a sounding board, or whatever other analogy you want to use, but she was there for the purpose that Sykes needed her there for, a feminine presence, a non-sexual, therefore non-threatening presence. And really, I think it was a miracle that she made of it what she did.
Prefiero vivir porque no será la puerto.
What is it?
Hello, Kenneth. It's only little me.
I thought you'd be surprised.
Matron.
After 14 years of marriage to John Le Mesurier, Hattie fell in love with someone new.
Who was a great guy, and his name was John Schofield, and he was an entrepreneur.
The first time I ever met him at this party that Hattie gave, and I walked in, I think it was with Bruce Copp, and I said, "Oh, gosh, who's that handsome fellow over there? Look at that." He said, "Mm-mm."
He was a nice man, good-natured, loved Hattie, and, you know, they had a good, jolly relationship, and a sexy relationship.
I loved him, and my brother loved him. He was great. He was like... He was so different from my dad. Not to say that I love my dad any less, but it was just in a different way.
Publicity of the affair in the early 60s would have destroyed Hattie's reputation. The relationship was a closely guarded secret.
Another very important event in your life, Hattie. In that same year, on November the 10th, 1950 to be precise, you married well-known actor John Le Mesurier.
The millions who watched Hattie on This Is Your Life in 1963 had no idea her marriage was on the rocks.
So there's never a dull moment with Hattie, in fact.
No, there isn't really. I would like to say that I am eternally grateful to the way she runs the home, looks after the children, looks after me. The home comes first, really, I think I'm right in saying. But I think for somebody who is so busy all the time and so much in the public eye all the time, to do all these things is very difficult and a jolly neat trick.
Thank you, John Le Mesurier.
It was Hattie who ended the marriage, but by the time of the divorce, John was seeing Joan, and the press branded her the marriage breaker.
I know that John would never have gone for me if there had been any hope of keeping his marriage intact. I know that he really, really loved Hattie. She was everything. She was all woman.
On the day of the divorce, they all celebrated together. Hattie, John and Joan would remain lifelong friends.
We sort of all launched off into what seemed like happy ever afters. You know, Hattie had her chap, I had John. Yes, it was all hope for the future.
The Sykes shows and the Carry On films kept Hattie in the public eye, but privately, her weight was a problem.
Who would have thought a towel would have made all that much difference?
Hattie was wonderful and uninhibited on stage, but in her private life it was as if she was holding something back all the time. I think she hated being overweight.
She felt used, she felt so vulnerable. And I think the vulnerability came from the fact that she was a lady that took a lot of knocks, and also lots of personal knocks about her size and things, you know.
How dare you burst into Dr. Tinkle's room in this manner? Back to your wards, all of you.
Mavis?
Yes?
Get this old battleship out of here.
Battleship?
I don't think she partly enjoyed it, but she knew that to get professionally, to get what they wanted, she'd have to go with it.
Young chickens may be soft and tender, but the older birds have more on them.
True. It'll take a lot more stuffing.
There's no doubt in my mind that Hattie's career was restricted by that very male dominance of the way she was cast, the way she was used, the way she was written for. That she was an actress of far greater range than she was ever allowed to employ.
If she was anything of a looker, she wouldn't have to advertise. She's got a telephone. 748-2269.
748-2269. Yes, actually, that's me. Well, I'm 5'6", medium build.
Hattie's love affair with John Schofield was not to last.
I remember the only time I ever heard Hattie cry. She was in Rome and he'd left her, he'd dumped her for somebody else. I still don't know the details. It was all very vague, but he had gone. And she phoned me up and she was just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing.
She came to see me in the restaurant when she got back, and she was wearing dark glasses and a scarf over her, a sort of scarf over her head. And her face was all bruised. She had a black eye and a bruise here, and a contusion here of some kind, which actually left a permanent sort of scar. I shouldn't talk about this, really.
Life is fair, gloom and misery everywhere.
I think she was totally in love and really loved this man, you know. It made her sort of vulnerable and girly, you know, and all that. And she was like, she was just in a sort of daze with it all. And I think it would have gone on all her life.
Despite her personal pain, Hattie continued to entertain her fans.
Walked in and met me.
Could you pass the salt, please? Thank you.
Want any peppermint?
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Now listen, get your fork in there.
What do you mean?
Look, get your fork in there.
Throughout the 1970s, Hattie was struggling with ill health.
She began to develop heart problems in addition to many other things she already had. And she said to me, darling, you always planned to go to Ireland. Well, let's go now. She put her hand across the table and took my hand and said, "Brucey, I'm not going to live very long." And I said, "Well, what's the answer to that? There's nothing much I can say to that." And she said, "Well, I just wanted you to know."
On October the 6th, 1980, Hattie Jacques died from a heart attack. She was 56.
There was this rather small church, and you went in under a sort of roof of leaves, and it was rather sweet and small. And then standing on the bank underneath these trees was a little group of about 20 people.
One of them said, "We're very sorry to hear about Hattie. We've come all the way from Fulham because we all wanted to just be here to pay our respects." And John said, "Oh, how kind, you know," in his gentlemanly way. And he said, "Look, I'm sure we could possibly find some room at the back of the church if you'd like to come in and stand there." And this woman said, no, it's your private grief, and we wouldn't intrude." And as we came out, the same ladies were still there, and one of them said to John, "Don't suppose you could give us a lift back to Fulham, could you?" And John...
Decent and kindly and has some gold within them.
She wasn't an angel by any means. She had a raunchy side to her too, which was very agreeable to me and funny and lovely. And, what can I say?